In every respect, Dan Blocker was monumental. On top of weighing 300 pounds, his 6 feet, 4 inches of height made him tower over much of Hollywood. His stature wasn't the only thing that made him stand out, though. The dot represented his heart, his talent, and the wealth he amassed with perseverance, grit, and dedication. When he passed away in 1972, Blocker was worth $5 million, or almost $25 million now. Blocker wasn't born into affluence, but he does have the kind of fortune that other performers can only dream about. He worked his way up from a poor family in Texas to become a famous TV personality, and he earned every cent. Just how did he reach that point? What happened to make this little town lad, who had no ties to Hollywood, become one of the most famous faces on television? We travel back in time to 1946 for the answer, a long time before Bonanza brought him fame. When he was a young guy with unrealized potential, a football uniform, and an uncertain future, football consumed his life. He suited up for the Texas school that was affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention, Hardin-Simmons University. However, he changed schools to Alpine, Texas's Sul Ross State Teachers College after only a year. It was a move that changed the game. He blossomed into a superstar while playing for Sul Ross. On the field, his enormous frame rendered him unbeatable. He was well liked by both teammates and coaches due to his pleasant demeanor. However, he had interests outside of athletics. Blocker found work that suited his tough character in between games and workouts. He proved that his physical prowess and towering stature weren't reserved for the football field by performing in rodeos. Additionally, he served as a bouncer and intervened in fights when he wasn't wrestling livestock. Dan Blocker was already a formidable adversary even in his early days. He earned his bachelor's degree in teaching in 1950. Considering his stature, Blocker's choice to become a teacher may have seemed out of character, but he was truly committed to the field. Before relocating to Carlsbad, New Mexico, he taught 6th grade and coached at Eddy Elementary School. In Sonora, Texas, he had a position teaching high school English and drama. His trip to Hollywood was still years away, though he did eventually teach in California. Duties demanded his attention before he could pursue other ambitions. Initiation of the Korean War was announced, after which Blocker was inducted into the United States military. Defense Forces. As an infantry sergeant in the 179th Infantry Regiment, 45th Infantry Division, he was sent to Korea after completing basic training at Fort Polk in Louisiana. It wasn't an easy task, but he persisted like a genuine fighter. Blocker was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart for wounds received while serving his country. Among his other decorations are the following: the National Defense Service Medal, the Korean Service Medal with 2 bronze campaign stars, the United Nations Service Medal, the Korean War Service Medal, the Combat Infantryman Badge, and the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation. He had changed a lot since leaving Texas, even though his military service had ended in 1952. He had witnessed battle, suffered through adversity, and bore the burden of events that would mold his life thereafter. But he didn't allow those things derail him. On the contrary, he used them to propel forward. He made a new decision upon his return to the United States. He decided to pursue graduate studies rather than return to football or become a full-time teacher. A decision that would alter the course of his life irrevocably was to acquire a master's degree in drama. Acting wasn't always about the money and fame for Blocker. It all came down to emotion. He was charismatic and had a gift for captivating audiences with his stories. He and his wife Dolphia took the risky choice to go to Los Angeles, where he could showcase his abilities. It wasn't easy being a budding actor in 1950s Los Angeles, but Dan Blocker wasn't your average budding actor. He was towering over everyone at 6 feet, 4 inches, and 300 pounds. It wasn't about stature, though, to enter into Hollywood. It was all about demonstrating his competence. The casting directors were confused about how to use him at first. He lacked the diminutive stature of a typical supporting character and the towering presence of a classic starring guy. Their attention was captivated by Blocker's irresistible charisma. His affable personality belied his towering stature. He won over his enemies with ease. The film and television business didn't take long to take note. His early years in the entertainment industry were challenging. He took whatever role that came his way, like many actors who were attempting to make it. He made brief appearances in the beginning, occasionally in the role of an extra, and on occasion as a minor part with less dialogue. His first television job was in 1950's AXS Gunsmoke, where he played the role of a cavalry officer in Alarm at Pleasant Valley. Even though it was a small part, it was enough to get him an audition. It was from there that he began to get more guest spots on the immensely popular Western television series of the day. Just in 1957, he made appearances in Cheyenne, The Sheriff of Cochise, The Restless Gun, Colt Point 45, and the rest. He even played a gigantic monster named the Goon in the short film Outer Space Jitters, which featured the Three Stooges. He was gradually becoming well known. By 1958, momentum had begun to build. He got a recurring part as Tiny Buttinger on the George Montgomery Western series Cimarron City on NBC. This part allowed him to grow into his character beyond the scope of one episode, in contrast to his previous roles. Sergeant Preston of the Yukon, Zorro, Wagon Train, and Have Gun Will Travel were all released around the same period. He had not yet achieved stardom, but he was formally an actor in the industry. Until 1959, the year that altered the course of history. Television producer David Dortort was casting for the role of a calm, strong, and kind cowboy for an upcoming Western series. He was looking for an actor who could be both kind and tough on screen. Bonanza was the name of the show. With Eric Haas Cartwright dotted in the job. Blocker didn't nearly look the part when he arrived at the audition. He was the star of the hit NBC show Bonanza, which debuted on September 12, 1959. Adam, Haas, and young Joe Cartwright were the sons of Nevada rancher Ben Cartwright, and the show followed their family as they managed the enormous Ponderosa Ranch. Bonanza consisted of more than simply gunfights and excitement, unlike other classic westerns. Relationships, ethics, and family were the main themes. Haas, Blocker's character, got beloved by viewers very fast. He was the middle brother of the Cartwright family and was well liked for his amiability, generosity, and courageous spirit. Fans adored him because he deviated from the stereotypically rough cowboys seen on television. He refrained from resorting to violence and was slow to pull a gun. Rather, he depended on his emotions, sense of humor, and steadfast devotion to his family. The Bonanza cast had incredible chemistry. The commanding and sage Ben Cartwright was portrayed by Lorne Greene. Adam, who was serious and intellectual, was played by Pernell Roberts. The endearing and reckless young Joe was played by Michael Landon. The bond that kept them together was Blocker's Haas. His wit and warmth helped to ground the show in reality while the family dynamics were on display. Blocker was well known for 13 seasons. He became one of the most beloved actors in television history after appearing in 415 of the 431 episodes of Bonanza. It aired for a long period and had a lot of viewers. It was routinely ranked among the top 5 shows on television. During its prime, each episode of drew in more than 10 million viewers. Bonanza wasn't only a sensation, it was a moneymaker for him, too, because of her prominent role in the show, which only grew as the seasons progressed. He wasn't the kind to fritter away his mid-century fortune on ostentatious Hollywood extravagances. He continued to pursue what he liked while prudently investing for his family's financial future. Blocker managed to fit in film work despite the pressures of her popular TV show. He proved he could hold his own in comedies other than westerns in 1963's Come Blow Your Horn, which starred Frank Sinatra. In 1968's Lady in Cement, he reunited with Sinatra for another film, this time portraying a frightening bad guy. Hollywood was beginning to acknowledge Blocker's versatility, which was in sharp contrast to the charming Haas. Being a cowboy wasn't all he was. Even Stanley Kubrick, who cast Slim Pickens as Major T.J. King Kong in Dr. Strangelove, wanted him to perform the part. He was equally at home in dramatic and comedic roles. Despite its potential to become one of the most memorable parts in cinematic history, Blocker's agent declined the part. Something for a Lonely Man, a 1968 television movie starring Blocker, was about a blacksmith named John Killebrew who persuades other settlers to come to California and help him create a community. A comedic western titled The Cockeyed Cowboys of Calico County, in which he portrayed a reserved cowboy on the lookout for love, was released 2 years after that. Even as his career took off, he never lost sight of his roots. Blocker made an unexpected business decision in 1963 regarding In the end, he was instrumental in the national expansion of the Bonanza Steakhouse restaurant chain, which he helped establish. He created a whole brand around his character, and it was more than simply a commercial arrangement. A steakhouse that welcomed families and provided delicious food at reasonable pricing was the basic concept. But Blocker was the real deal at Bonanza Steakhouse. The restaurant was a smashing success because to his usage of his fame as Hoss Cartwright, which had made him a household name. He was the driving force behind the brand. Blocker, appearing at franchise openings, endorsing the restaurant in ads, and making sure the quality was up to par with the pleasant, family-friendly reputation he had established on Bonanza. People would return to the restaurant more frequently if they remembered Hoss Cartwright's friendly service, which he understood. Indeed, he was correct. It was a quick-growing chain, growing its presence across the country and rising to prominence as a prominent steakhouse brand during that period. This wasn't some side hustle, it was a huge strategic investment. By the mid-1960s, Blocker was raking in dough from more than simply acting thanks to his role with the steakhouse chain in Bonanza, which was attracting millions of viewers per episode. As the number of franchises he owned increased, he was able to rely on a reliable source of income. However, Blocker wasn't only using his restaurant empire to amass fortune. He was in great demand for endorsement deals and advertisements due to his status as one of the most famous faces in television. Blocker made full use of the fact that companies wanted Hoss Cartwright to market their products. His likeness and name were used in commercials for a wide variety of products, including those with a Western theme and everyday necessities. He amassed an enormous fortune through endorsement deals, Bonanza earnings, and restaurant ventures. When Bonanza premiered in 1959, Blocker had an estimated net worth of about $150,000. At the height of the show's popularity in 1965, the figure had soared to $3 million. His estimated net worth at the time of his death in 1972 was $5 million, which is almost $25 million in today's dollars. Obviously, he wasn't just investing money. Real estate also contributed to his wealth. Blocker bought a number of homes, one of which being a 5-0-0-0 square foot estate in Los Angeles' Hancock Park. The fact that Rob Zombie, a musician and filmmaker, bought the same house later shows how valuable it was. Land he had purchased in Texas would only grow in value over time, so he kept his real estate interests there as well. While there are several real estate ties to Blocker, Dan Blocker Beach in Malibu, California stands out. However, how did this investment come to be? Blocker, Lorne Greene, and Michael Landon, his co-stars on Bonanza, made an unexpected investment in the mid-1960s. A half-mile of excellent Malibu shoreline was purchased by them with a combined sum of millions of dollars. Even then, Malibu real estate was a good investment. Now, it might be worth more than $100 million. However, the Bonanza performers weren't in it for the money. They were concerned about the land's aesthetic value and wanted to ensure it was put to public use. Malibu was adored by Blocker. Away from the mayhem of Hollywood, he found solace there, lived there, and reared his family. However, following his death in 1972, his fellow actors took a step that paid tribute to his memory. In 1979, they gave the oceanfront property to California instead of selling it for a huge profit. In honor of the individual who had played a role in its preservation, Dan Blocker Beach was rechristened. Yet, the property lay empty for a long time. What started out as a public recreational area became an overgrown, neglected plot of land by the 1990s due to bureaucratic red tape that delayed its opening. More than 4 decades after Blocker's death, in 2014, local authorities gave the beach the green light to open. Was there to see it happen because his son, David Blocker. However, Blocker's legacy lived on beyond Malibu. Blocker was never one to waver from his ideals. His influence on business, social justice, and television lasted far beyond his time. He wasn't scared to speak out on political issues, unlike many celebrities who preferred to keep their opinions under wraps. He was an outspoken progressive who supported progressive candidates and was a longtime Democrat. When Pat Brown ran for re-election in 1966 against Ronald Reagan, he was one of the few performers who publicly backed Brown. Additionally, he rallied behind Senator Eugene McCarthy in 1968, who was opposing President Lyndon B. Johnson's policy regarding the Vietnam War. However, justice, fairness, and standing up for one's rights were central to Blocker's activity. He demonstrated this in the 1960s through means that extended well beyond endorsements for political campaigns. While filming Bonanza in the South, he and his co-stars faced an unavoidable truth. Because of segregation rules, the hotel they had reserved for the show could not accommodate the black cast and crew. Blocker wasted no time acting out of anger. No one from Bonanza would remain if the hotel wouldn't let them, he made it plain. That wasn't the first time Blocker spoke out. he also refused to support an establishment that supported racism with Green in Landon. A theater in Jackson, Mississippi planned to host his 1964 performance. He didn't think twice when he came and found out the location was segregated, even though he had been told otherwise. He declined to perform and went away. He went on to say that he would refuse to work for any company that did not treat its employees fairly. Back then, Hollywood rarely used this kind of action. To avoid controversy, several actors choose to remain mute on social topics. Nevertheless, Blocker was never afraid to speak out against wrongdoing, but Blocker was a humble man who was nevertheless a man of action. Even though he was one of the top-paid TV actors, he frequently voiced his opinions about the inequality of wealth. He once said that teachers and educators should receive much more than an actor's because they molded future generations, and he went on to term his own paycheck from Bonanza completely immoral. Taking into account his background, this viewpoint was reasonable. Prior to his acting career, Blocker was a teacher. He knew firsthand the meaning of toiling away on a meager wage in the absence of a safety net. As a result, he maintained a humble perspective despite his increasing fortune. And yet, he despised being the center of attention, fame, or no celebrity. Blocker purposefully shied away from the limelight, in contrast to several performers who pursued it. He actually uprooted his family and headed to Switzerland in 1970 to get away from the hectic life in Hollywood. Money had nothing to do with the decision. He had amassed a fortune of over $1 million. For the sake of his family, he merely desired a less hectic existence. Blocker initially developed an interest in Switzerland after perusing National Geographic and reading about the nation, apart from the mayhem of the entertainment business. The tranquility and natural splendor of the place enchanted him when he finally made the journey there. Especially Lugano felt like coming home. His kids went to a local American school once the family settled there. Their father's fame brought him constant attention, but the transfer provided them an opportunity to grow up in a different environment. When Blocker wasn't around in Hollywood, his aura of mystery grew even thicker. He was a major star on television, but he wasn't interested in living the high life. He favored the familiar, his family, and the uncomplicated. Something that was becoming more and more uncommon in the field. Even after that, Blocker kept amassing wealth. He had become wealthy thanks to his acting profession. He had already amassed considerable riches through his investments, businesses, and endorsements. He had amassed enough wealth to ensure his family's financial stability by the early 1970s, but he refused to allow his wealth define him. Once again, he returned the favor. To defend justice, he took a stand. He went beyond just entertainment by using his platform to have a positive impact. The Hollywood industry was rocked by Blocker's sudden death in 1972. Everyone was sad. His co-stars were distraught. Still, there was more than melancholy in his wake. A Malibu Beach, a name for fairness and compassion, that was the legacy. Dan Blocker was more than only a cowboy on television, he left a legacy via his family. A man of principle, he excelled in acting, business, and philanthropy. He has one of the most extraordinary stories in Hollywood history, and it hasn't even ended yet.